We are very concerned about the messages that are coming from the Commonwealth. There certainly seems to be a bit of a double message here about the social distancing requirements that are to be applied outside of the school gate and those that are to be applied inside the school gate.
Are you concerned more about the federal government or the state government? Because I think that, I mean, as far as I can tell, the federal government has been very clear on where it stands at the moment when it comes to students, at least anyway, with transmission rates very low.
Well, our members certainly have concerns at the local level around the country as well with some of the state and territory governments. But one of the things that the Commonwealth government says repeatedly is that it's the responsibility of states and territories to run school systems around the country. And so to have a message from the PM that schools should be open immediately for business on Friday off the back of this report is very, very concerning.
OK, what would you suggest would be the ideal way to do things? I mean, would you be keeping teachers away from students, keeping teachers away from each other in staff rooms, etc.? Is that a way to go?
Well, there are a set of guidelines that have been published by the chief medical officers, and we need to have the resources in schools, excuse me, to implement those guidelines. We need to be able to safely socially distance within schools because we've got 2.5 million children in public schools and several hundred thousands of adults mixing together. And I think we can look to what's happening overseas where countries such as Norway are returning slowly and cautiously and making sure that for face-to-face provision they've got everything in place that we need to have in place. The last thing we want to do is rush this and have a spike of COVID-19 transmissions.
There was a report on the weekend by the National Centre for Immunisation and Research and Surveillance, which in New South Wales at least showed these very low transmission rates. I'm not sure if you've seen that at all, but is that something that would energise the argument to get kids back at school?
Well, research is very important, but when this report was released, we were told that it had not been peer-reviewed. It was based on 18 cases only, half of students and half with adults. And there's a caveat there that it was taken at a time when we were socially distancing in our schools. So for me, it actually raises more questions than it answers. And I wonder whether it should be the basis of a policy decision that we should have face-to-face teaching happening across the country immediately right now.
Peter Dutton said last week that the Queensland Premier is beholden to your union. What was your reaction to that?
Well, we work very closely with state and territory governments so that we can meet the needs of our members. Our members are very, very concerned about their own health and safety, but also concerned about continuing to provide a high-quality education. And I think that they've done a remarkable job pivoting throughout this crisis and making sure that our children are learning. Admittedly, not everybody is in a classroom face-to-face, but education is still being delivered. And I think that's a very important message here. It's important that governments work together with unions. That's the way that we're going to achieve the best results for everybody as part of this crisis.
Should kids be going back to school in Queensland?
Well, in fact, children are going back to school in Queensland. They're just doing it differently.
Yeah. I mean, going to classrooms for face-to-face, similar to what's happening in New South Wales at the moment, even though it's a bit of a staggered start.
So the Queensland government has taken a very good proactive view about this and people are remote learning for the first 5 weeks of the term. School is open for the children of essential workers and also those children who are vulnerable. I really don't think there's any need for us to rush this in terms of face-to-face, a full return to face-to-face teaching. Let's get the provisions in place. Let's make sure that schools can safely deliver education and keep not only children but the adults who work in them safe throughout this crisis.